get on and do this. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about privacy and specifically how in privacy and security, like, are they the same or how are they different? So I'm going to go ahead and add in here Arjun and let him introduce himself. Arjun, thank you so much for taking some time to join us here this morning.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Josh. I really appreciate the time and excited to talk about cloaked, privacy, and everything in between.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure that especially when you're coming from beta and moving into a launch, no doubt it has been an extremely busy last week for you, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think I've been in technology for a while, wore a lot of technical hats from engineer, all the CTO. I think every launch is always distinct in every company. And with Cloaked, like same thing. It's had its own launch, own time, own experience, different team, but it's the same feeling. It's adrenaline, excitement, energy in everything we do. I
Yeah.
could feel it. We were up at 2 a.m. and everybody was rallying around till that 3 a.m. start time, and we were super excited.
That's awesome. So just so everybody knows, as we're heading into this time, I mean, we've got some topics for discussion. I will have a Q&A with Arjun at the end. So if you leave a question in the comment section, we will try to get to as many of those questions as possible. And those questions can be related to privacy. They can also be specifically related to Cloaked. I'll give Arjun an opportunity to answer some of the common questions that even I've been getting about Cloaked. So just make sure that you leave those comments and we'll get to those as much as we can. All right, Arjun, let's go ahead and get started. I want to give you just the kind of starter question that you can go in whatever direction you want, but we too often hear privacy and security, those two words lumped together. You get privacy and security, or make sure you protect your privacy and security. And I'm guilty of this myself. But those are two very distinct concepts, right? How would you distinguish between those two things?
So this is something I had to wrestle with when I first started getting into Cloaked and thinking about this whole industry as a whole. What I thought about was between CISOs, VP of engineering. I've always heard like let's into security and then mix in privacy, and there's not a really clear understanding of why we're doing each. What does each mean? So what I've realized actually ultimately for us, we'd find as three distinct layers. The outermost layer is what I ultimately figured out was security. This idea of discussions around encryption, fingerprinting, how I'm being followed around, this idea of fraud. How is it that my identity is being stolen? How is it that I'm being attacked? What is that vector attack for an individual? That's something I always thought of as like security comes into that first level of penetration for an individual. How am I ultimately protecting myself from different people who want to compromise me? And security begins with that concept. But what doesn't get into is where I kind of define privacy. Privacy is such a nebulous word, and we can talk about that a little bit later, is by design.
Yeah.
Because big data is designed, big tech is designed around collecting a lot of data, a lot of information. They want to keep the definition of privacy vague. It kind of turns into another word about anonymity or hiding yourself. But when you think about privacy at its core, privacy, I think, talks about where does my data live? Who has access to it? What does it look like? Ultimately, it's about your information, your representation of yourself, and in that relationship between you, a website, and a company, or even another person, how is your information being exchanged? What is happening that moment? But that's still a technical aspect. It's the next level about who you are. What I realized is the ultimate level about what this all boils down to, this layer we call comfort, that kind of brings all this together, how you mix privacy and comfort. And comfort begins in the point where cognitively everybody gets the problem. For us, we take a simple example. If I ask you for your name, email, phone number, credit card, address, your son's photo, his face,
Yeah.
each of these moments, you don't have to know it's privacy. You don't have to know what it means, but you have a feeling, you have a gut instinct that's like, I don't quite like that, or I don't quite want to follow through. And
Yeah.
that's where we realize it all boils down to build comfort, instill privacy, and establish security. How do you do that sequentially? How do you do that together? That's where these words kind of play together and work together in every step of the way.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I love this idea of when it comes to security or privacy, almost embracing the discomfort a little bit, like be willing to be a little uncomfortable. And not only that, but I've found, at least when I'm talking with my parents or with somebody that is worried about something, whenever that internal like voice in your head like tells you this is uncomfortable, you're giving up a little too much information when somebody calls you and they're asking for some type of information that maybe you're not comfortable with, like listening to that and being willing to like embrace that discomfort. I think that is it's an important step to take. Now, one of the things that I've noticed the more that I've interacted with different people, like for example, I just posted a video about how to travel, how I travel securely. And I got a number of responses that were somewhat expected for me, which is, oh, when you're doing this, if you want to be really secure, or if I'm worried about my privacy and the data and stuff, if you want to be really private, you should have done this, or you should have done this. And it feels like it's this idea that the rabbit hole of privacy is very deep. And so when it comes to making decisions about my personal information, or for you, your personal information, what's the rubric that you use or you recommend people use to try to understand when to give up information or when to be willing to do something that maybe does feel a little uncomfortable?
Well, I think this is a really good question. It's a very tough thing to figure out. And
Yeah.
I once again try to start with an emotional feeling, because you can't drill deep into thinking about, well, am I fully secure? Can somebody keep watching me? What are they going to do behind the scenes? Because I found this out, and I said this when before I started Cloak. I started doing research and thinking about, and I asked people about how they thought about privacy, and I had a funny anecdote that came back to me repeatedly. People who invested 1 hour in their privacy or invested 100 hours in their privacy felt exactly the same. Or even if they spent 10 minutes, it was the most funniest feeling, because you invest a little bit and you're like, oh my God, there's so much more to do. You invest 100 hours into it and you're like, I'm still nowhere close. And so
Yeah.
it's a funny moment when you come like, well, this is a very difficult thing. But it comes down to realize, like, what am I investing into? And I think that's is like, what is the intent, the purpose? Because if you want to be completely removed from everything, don't want to be online at all, then you should optimize for those actions. And I think it comes from that. And this is even for all privacy levels. I always say be judicious about what you do when you go online. Like I'm now getting a lot more socially active, because now part of Cloaked, it's important as trying to be a thought leader, talking about
Yeah.
privacy, etc. We're more social, but generally, even in my personal life, I've always been cautious about what I put on the internet. I remember
Yeah.
back in '06 when I first joined Facebook, is a funny thought where I was like, well, what if one day Facebook becomes a big company and people start using Facebook to ID you? Governments might look at this. Businesses might look at your Facebook profiles. And you'd laugh. Everyone's laughing like, well, that's what happens now. And it's like, back in '06, it's like, this is cool and nifty, but it's like asking me to put all this stuff about me, and it's so easy. And back then, I was never a privacy expert back then, but I was just a little careful about myself, and just like when I put something on the internet, as a lot of people who are denizens of the internet been for a while, it's there forever. That's mostly true and pretty true in a lot of regards. But the challenge in that perspective is that regardless if it's permanent or not, you should always be careful. Like when you're walking into a job interview, you're going to your work, you're even going on a date, you present yourself in a certain way. You're not coming in with a torn shirt or stains on these things. You want to put yourself in a certain perspective. I think that's same online, is that it's not a place where you feel that, oh, it's okay, nobody can see it. Well, there's not always an opportunity for that. So I think coming back to that point, set that objective, that purpose, what you want to do. And I think for me, like even personally, I'm not the person, most people aren't, where I want to be anonymous, where I want to hide.
Mhm.
Now, there's a lot of people who want to, and I think there's a
Yep.
lot of things you can do. I think my perspective is that I want to feel comfortable when I'm browsing, when I'm interacting and downloading apps. And part of the comfortable is also I don't want to be bombarded either. So it also comes part of like organization, and or like not just invading my privacy and having my information. It's also
Yeah.
invading my time, my energy, my mental headspace. I don't want to see that all the time. So I think about
Yeah.
like being cautious when I click a targeted ad, because I know that it's going to come back to me and keep following me everywhere I go. I think
Yeah.
about some privacy settings as like, well, this is going to be public. Another thing I'd just flat out say, do not, whenever an app asks for your context and you don't know the app, don't hit allow right away. Like, read a little bit more, see what it's doing. Like, I know TikTok's a big offender. TikTok always asks for, hey, let me ask onto your contacts. Well, do you really need to give all of your contacts, phone numbers, email, etc. to TikTok? That's something to be judicious. And I think people are already becoming privacy aware by being cautious about what they're doing. And I think that going, when I download an app, when I'm trying to be forced to make an account, if I'm interacting with this website, or even a person I'm talking in real life, think about it. Think about this as like, I'm putting myself in a position, I'm putting myself out there. 2018, the Cambridge Analytica exposed is like, this is how this all gets used. And ultimately, I always say, if you're not concerned about the emotional side, it also financially hurts you. There's an emotional financial side of things where emotionally you can feel like people will be either targeting, using, or generally, I don't know how this information is being used. Financially, it's used to target you specifically. Things cost differently for you. You find out that you're like, well, maybe I should be using this product. I didn't know I was into, I don't think I'm losing any hair, but maybe I am because I'm a male, and like Instagram's thinking, let's push down his throat buying male products. I now have vitamins that I didn't think I really needed. But these are things that impacts come because that's how privacy is invaded. So I think about set an objective, take dutiful actions, and don't beat yourself up. That's the final part. It's like this is continuous, and if as long as you are thinking about it, it's all right. That's the first step.
Yeah. Well, if you've just joined us, I am talking with Arjun. He's the CEO of Cloaked. They just came out of beta and they've launched on Product Hunt. And we're talking about the difference between privacy and security. And what I'd like for you to do, if you're on live right now, I'm going to share one of my own, but I want you to share a way in which you have seen privacy kind of broken on the internet for you, right? So an example for me would be, I have suddenly seen a lot of ads on Facebook for a shampoo that helps you regrow hair. Now, I mean, come on, like obviously I don't know how they know that. Maybe they scanned pictures or whatever, but that company was able to target me in some way, because, and somehow they know that I would be the perfect target for that. And perhaps Arjun, you look like you've got a great head of hair there. You would not be getting that same treatment. And so if you've got a story like that, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you've seen privacy kind of taken advantage of in some way, where your data is used in ways that you weren't expecting. And if you weren't aware, this month, October, is actually Cybersecurity Month. And Arjun, one of the things you were talking about was, we have generally this awareness, like people, my mom, my dad, we have this awareness that privacy is at risk, like our personal information is at risk. Incoming phone calls, incoming text messages could be something that it's not. But despite having that knowledge, it seems that a lot of people aren't actually taking much action. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you think are the biggest barriers that's causing people not to take action despite knowing that they should be doing something?
Yeah, I think the first part is that it's designed to be friction-full. I think when I look at security settings, to think about privacy settings across products or even companies you're working with, there's an intentional design around, we don't want to make this super simple, really easy to understand. And we think about, and these are people who want to exploit information. The other sad part, the irony, is that people also want to protect you, security professionals, privacy professionals, and the answers both do this the same thing, is that they tell you a myriad of different things you should do. They also say you should understand about encryption or end-to-end encryption. You think about how VPNs work. You think about, well, you should not be putting like your alias, or you should put an alias out there. There's so many steps for an individual. That's a big cognitive load, and they're trying to be very helpful. And I think that's what's been difficult for, I think, everybody, and this is what we've impacted Cloaked, is that there's so many steps you have to take, or there's so many things you need to figure out. Do I really need this setting on or off? Like, I actually do want people to understand a little bit about me, because what we realize is that ultimately people like things being personalized to them, but they don't want to feel compromised in the process. They don't want to be surveilled. We think about when things are being customized, they like the customization that comes back to it, but if it compromises them, they don't want it. But they do like these aspects. So it's also tricky because they say it's all or nothing. Well, if you don't like Instagram and the way we do things, delete it. Now, Facebook's experimenting right now about a paid plan without personalization. We'll see how that shakes out and kind of comes out and pans
I haven't
out. But
heard
I think,
about that.
yeah, they're experimenting and rolling out that you can have a Facebook or Instagram without personalization, but you have to pay for it. And I think
Huh.
that's going to be an interesting rollout. We'll see how that expands, what comes out to it. But even that's now a barrier. It's like, okay, well, I don't have any say or control on this thing. I have to either pay for it. There's no also, I don't, sometimes I don't want to just pay and lose all the personalization. Is there some middle ground? And I think that lack of a middle ground is what is really the big barrier. I don't know what to
Yeah.
do. I don't know what to pick. And I don't want to just do nothing or everything. And I
Yeah.
like Facebook or I like Instagram. I just don't like all aspects of it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the big barriers that come up. And it's just, there's a lot of things you can do, but I can talk about that. But it's just thinking about the barriers. It's just, it's designed to make sure that you don't take action because they want to collect as much information as they possibly can. And
Yeah.
I also personally am not trying to ever become, I'm anti big tech. That's what I'm trying to fight about. It's the
Sure.
business model. I wrote an article about this online. Was that it's the business model that's been designed is that data exploitation, data harvesting is how the industry is supposed to work. And I think, and if you're not doing it, you're falling behind. But I
Yeah.
think, and this is my prediction, that as people realize that they don't want this to exist, there's going to be a shift. It has to be somewhere where it's like power has to be not just all one side of the company. And if you don't like it, just stop using the company. It's like, okay, let's give consumers some control, but not make it complicated. You're not going to download 32 gigabytes of your Facebook data and say, oh, okay, well, let me figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is one thing, like you're saying, that barrier of just taking, okay, if you just spend a few minutes, you can go in and change those settings. And most of the big tech players, Google, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, I think even TikTok in a little bit, at least give you some control, maybe not a lot, but they give you some control over how you share your data and all that stuff. But I know that a lot of people feel a lot more uncomfortable when you shift from big tech over to something like government, right? Where now it doesn't feel like I have as much control or say in any of that. And as an example, I know that there's been a lot of news about how some governments have tried to make encryption illegal in some way. Or I was talking with somebody else in Sweden. I think this is happening in Switzerland as well, where they're trying to create a digital ID for citizens. And so in that case, it feels like you have a lot less control. Is that where we're headed? And if so, how do we as just individuals deal with that kind of privacy invasion?
Yeah. So I'll start with a funny story when I started realizing this myself.
Okay.
I remember, so I have Global Entry. I'm from the US, and Global Entry is a program you can enter into to be able to fast track travel and get through security faster, security lines where you have to TSA, take everything out. And before, you had to always put your fingerprints and put your passport. And I said, okay, that makes sense to me. I got to do that. And I opted to give my fingerprints because I'm saying that's fine. I understand. I'm opting for that level of convenience, compromises some privacy. But one day, without me even realizing it, I'm coming in, I land from the airport, and I go in, and the gate agent says, "Oh, you're welcome to go through. You're all set." I said, "Wait, what just happened?" I was like, "I didn't take my passport in my pocket." "Oh, so we have new technology that scans your face. We know you're here. You're all set." And I said,
Yep.
"Wait, I didn't give my face." Like, what? I was like, "Oh, we know everything. You're all set." Like you're, and
I
then
know.
I physically stopped, and it's not even because I was part of Cloaked or anything. I was like, wait, tell me more. And they thought I was being stupid. They're like, why are you upset about this? You're now so much faster. You can walk through. I was like, but I don't even know where the camera is. You just told me that I'm good to go. And like, it
Yeah.
was a crazy thought. But what I realized is that, and you'll see the studies that prove this, the actual sentiment is that we always think we opt for convenience, but people today, and the number is 47%, and so almost 50-50, people say that the privacy is as important to them as convenience. It's almost 50-50 at this point. So
Mm,
we've been in this past decade of convenience, but people
yep.
have started saying that I don't want that. And that's what I'm saying and thinking for digital IDs, requiring biometrics, is that over the coming decade, as things like countries like Sweden or these efforts keep expanding, there will be a push for digital IDs, and people come into it. Apple started testing around even putting a license on your phone. I think that's not a bad direction for the world to head into. It simplifies
Okay.
people's life, it adds convenience,
Yeah.
but the thing that's going to happen, it has to happen naturally. This is what I predict with user sentiment. Governments and all these entities will start saying and realizing people have to have some control because they're not, if they're forced into it, they're going to stop using it, and governments don't want that. And you'll be like, well, I rolled out this digital ID program and only 10%, 15% opted in.
Yeah.
And that's the case, then you're not going to be unsuccessful. And it'll start with the early stages of, okay, your digital ID, but if you don't like it, you can opt out completely and say, you can't use any of our government services if you choose not to have digital ID. Now,
Yeah.
that will suck, but it'll be the beginning. And then as people say, and they vote, they talk, they bring up, and they show with their activation that, no, I'm good carrying my paper stuff, or I don't want to have digital. People say, okay, let's start giving a bit more say. You can opt out of XYZ of the government programs, or your government ID can only be used in specific cases. And ultimately, every step of the way, which will grow, there'll have to be transparency. Governments, countries will have to say on entities that work on this, here's what's happening. Here's how we got the photo. Here's when it was scanned. Here's like,
Yeah.
we saw that you're walking this thing, and that's, we knew because of you submitted this information. And if you say,
Yeah.
hey, that sounds good to me, but eventually you say, I don't want to be a part of it anymore, you can opt out. And I think that's where we're going to head. So I don't think we should be afraid of digital IDs. We have to make sure that we're just continuously talk about, I want control as part of that process. If I don't have control, well, I'm not going to opt into the thing you're launching. Go invest billions of dollars. We as consumers are just going to say, I don't want you to be tracking everything about me. And that's going
Yeah.
to become the norm. People feel that every day. And it's not people who are just in the privacy space. It's everyday people. They feel it. They turn off and mute their Alexas because it's like, well, I don't know if this is going to do anything, but I feel better. And that's going to just grow on more and more and more until behavior changes and say, you know what? I don't want the digital ID.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm glad you said that, just because I don't think that the answer anytime we're talking about privacy is just delete it or just get rid of it, right? Like, oh, okay, if you're worried about Facebook privacy, just delete it. Because I mean, that's not practical. I mean, I know for some people that makes sense, right? For them, that's the level of privacy they want to have. But there is this kind of practicality to the way that we interact with people online, where you have to give up something, and there's got to be that kind of balance that we were talking about, where, all right, digital ID, there are positive aspects of that, but like you're saying, there is also value in making sure that you're communicating with your representative in some way to say, hey, this is okay, as long as we've got a little bit more choice in how this can be shared and what can be done using this. I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot, both from what you're saying and even hearing from other people as well, and myself, is that a lot of this kind of privacy related stuff is really based on trust, right? Do I trust that when I turn off that setting in Facebook that they're actually going to do away with it? Or when I make that request to delete my data from, XYZ data broker, that they're going to actually delete that? Or even from like something like Cloaked, where, okay, I'm going to trust you guys to help me maintain a level of privacy, but in so doing, I'm actually going to have to give you a little bit of information, right? So how is it that we determine who to trust? Like, what would you say? What are the questions that you ask yourself when you're thinking about, do I trust this company with my data?
Yeah, so it's an interesting point about trust. And it's always that in perspective from Cloaked is like, well, how do I trust Cloaked, and why would I want to put information there? Like, and I think it comes back to is there's one is an emotional answer around it, but you have to also, let's start looking at practically. When you think about Cloaked, take us for example, before I talk about anybody else. Why trust and why do this? This is our business. This is what we're investing in. This is what we're all about. We care about your data. We care about your privacy. We care about security. We've got a full dedicated security team. We invest constantly thinking about how are we thinking about you as a user, what your information is looking like, what does encryption mean for you, and how do we make this better and better and better every step of the way? Because that's our business. That's if we're doing something different like that, wouldn't then there'd be different alignment. And I think I got this advice a while ago. if you look at the business's values and the customer value they're getting from the product, they should be aligned. And we look at Cloaked, for example, people give us some grief and we're going to work on improving it. That why is Cloaked a paid product? Like, why do you have to pay for this? Why does it come into it? Well, hopefully you see that the business's value and your value getting out of it are you're paying the money that's moving is aligned, because we're trying to build something that you'd be willing to pay for, which helps grow and expand the business. And it's not that, well, it's all free. Well, then how is the business sustaining? They have a lot of employees. How's things? Well, that means something else is happening. And I think that's where you have to think about from like a business value perspective. Like I was thinking, and we were talking to a POS company, and just having a chat with somebody on their team, and they process transactions, etc. And their entire business is all based on transactions and what do they do with the data? How do they give the data out to many companies to target you, market to you, distill information about you? That's their business model. And that's why when we're getting into new things about Cloaked, to think about Cloaked cards, etc. in the future. But it's part of that is because that's the business model of these companies. So, and then you can take some easy answers. You say, look at a company's privacy policy, look at their website and see what they do. But I think the nuances come into, do they have a security team? I think there's Patreon. I don't want to say if that is incorrect, so I apologize if the answer is incorrect, but I believe at one point in the last couple of years, Patreon fired their security team. And they may have built and restarted it. As part of layoff, they let go of the whole team. And I said, well, that's insane. Okay, well, you're just going to let your other engineers manage security. That shouldn't be an afterthought. And I think that's like, we have engineers we've hired, we've got teams, we've got advisors, all working and thinking about security of our product. And you can look at LinkedIn. You can look at like who's there. Does anybody have a security title? Well, that's an easy way to kind of understand, well, this company is investing or not investing. Then you think about from that perspective, like, well, look at the language. When you join the product, are they cautious? Are they thinking about what information they're collecting, what information is being shared? Like for Cloaked, we stand by this and we kind of go back and forth because some users get locked in their account. We don't force an email address or a phone number to join the product, because the perspective is that we want to make sure that you can come in, try out Cloaked, but we don't want to force it upon registration. Now, there's points when you're dealing with telecom and email and forwarding, you do need it because we want to send it somewhere, get a phone call, etc. But when you make it on registration, you don't have to. And I think that where forced choices are happening in your product or an app or thing you're using, that's indicative of this whole thing. Forced choice lets you see, well, this company's making me give you a phone number to sign up. I was like, well, why? I don't want to. Like, and that's the type of thinking. Or I have to give an email address. Like, well, what is this going to look like? Does this company care about this? It's so a company behaves online just like it's as a person. You can watch the nuances. What do they emphasize? What do they not talk about? Then you can do digger. You can look deeper. Look at the LinkedIn. Look at their hiring. Are they investing more in security? Every company has a hiring page. Are they hiring more security people? Like these types of things are ways to approach that. If you care that deep, I think as a regular everyday person, look at the way they're talking to you as you're joining the product. That's an easy way to kind of start getting a gut check.
Yeah. Well, if you're just joining us, again, my name's Josh with All Things Secured, and I'm here with Arjun. He's the CEO of Cloaked. They are a product that does privacy. I'm going to ask him a little more details about that in just a moment. They just came out of beta and they've launched on Product Hunt. And like I said, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat because I'm starring some of these and we're going to ask Arjun in just a few minutes. I'm going to ask him to kind of explain Cloaked and exactly what it does and what they have coming in the future. But one last question for you, Arjun. Something you mentioned earlier was talking about the privacy policy. And, you know, I think it would be pretty ridiculous to go through this whole thing about privacy and not actually dig in just a little bit more. That's one of those pages on a website that I would guess that very, very few people actually look at. And even my own privacy policy is incredibly boring for me to look over. Yeah. When you're thinking about a privacy policy, if somebody was to go look at that, what are the important things that we're looking for? Like what do you want to know that would give you confidence after looking at a privacy policy that now, okay, I can trust this company with some of my data?
Absolutely. Privacy policy is always an interesting thing, especially us in the field. It's hard for me to also kind of parse and look through as well, these dense documents. And
Yeah.
even us, we're continuously work in progress. Our original document helped the business get started and helped us understand like, hey, this is what's going on. Then as we got better as a business, the way we built our product, we removed things from our privacy policy. A lot of companies add more things and say, hey, now we're tracking you about this, now we're tracking you about that. We removed a lot of things like, hey, we don't have access to this data anymore. It's now all encrypted, no access, etc. And I think I've enjoyed, and you see this in a recent trend of a lot of newer companies investing in an easier to read privacy policy. I think we have a very pretty privacy policy, trying to make it easier to digest. We did a lot of effort there. It's never going to be good enough. A lot of people will be upset about why do you do this? Why do you do that? And I think we're going to keep getting better. And it's always a balance between what do you say as risk that willing the business to take on, and like legal jargon that has to kind of be there because you're a business. And it's balancing out. But one thing we were very careful of, and I stood a line in the sand, which has caused a lot of problems for us, but that's what we're standing by. We don't use Google Analytics in our product. We don't have any Facebook pixel trackers in our product. A lot of our competitors do. Now they say like it's only used to help give you better rewards, offers, etc. But we know that it doesn't, like, you can say all you want. The moment it's in Google, it's wherever Google wants it to be. And so we don't have all the benefits of Google Analytics and Cloaked, where we can see all the where users are, retargeting them, etc. We don't have the Facebook pixel tracker, so we can't easily get the good same data around that. Now we take that stance. Our competitors did not, so we're at a competitive disadvantage. But we are working with a very privacy-friendly user analytics tool, which actually lets us say we don't have any user information. It's all anonymized before it even hits us or look at. And so we want so that we know, are people hitting our website? Are people using our promotions? Things like that. We don't get all the granular data that Google's trying to track, aggregate, etc. And you can look at the privacy policy. Just Command F Google, and like you can see that like we don't have Google. Like that's the type of thinking around that. And it's like that type of approach around what is the company caring about. And the sad part is though, you'll see every company looks the same. When you see some cool ones where the privacy policy looks interesting to read, you look at and they're not doing X, Y, or Z, I definitely say it's worth a try. That means this company is thinking about a lot of different dimensions, not just their experience, their product. They're also thinking about how to be a service to you. They care about you as a customer. And I think that's always something great to see.
Yeah. Well, Arjun, I wanted to just say thank you, first of all, for coming on and chatting with us, but also I know that your team has allowed us to have a special promo code. I think it's only available for the next 24 hours. So if you use if you're interested in Cloaked, and like I said, I've already talked about this in a previous video because I was really fascinated by how you guys do your phone numbers and cloaking phone numbers. So you can use the code ATS and you'll get an exclusive discount. If I understand right, I think it's if you do an annual plan, you'll get 5 months free. And if you go on a monthly plan, you'll get 3 months free. And I think that even applies for those who maybe in the past have already signed up, and if you add in all your details next. So thank you so much for doing that. While we're at this point, can you explain a little more, like how would your elevator pitch, I guess, for Cloaked, and explaining what are the features that are currently available, and then if you don't mind, what are some of the features that are coming soon down the line?
So the elevator pitch, Cloaked is a consumer privacy company trying to put people in control of their data and their identity. What we did realize at Cloaked, it's not about just the security. It's not about just the privacy. It's about how do you feel comfortable when you're online, when you're interacting with websites, people, businesses, anywhere you go. What Cloaked does is it creates a unique identity every step of the way. You can think of a unique email, phone number, password, and soon credit card just for Target. Email, phone number, password for Uber. Phone number for a cute guy at the bar. Email for a realtor you're talking to online when you're trying to find a new apartment. It's not meant to be burner, throwaway data. It's meant to be real working piece of information tied to that unique website, business, person, relationship that you're trying to form. And it works natively in your iMessage, phone call, your native Gmail. You don't have to use our apps to respond. You can choose how to use it, or you can use everything in Cloaked. But that's what we're all about. We're a full end-to-end privacy platform. This is just the beginning. We're thinking about how do we actually make privacy consumable, all with the Cloaked philosophy, which gives you control without making that complicated. It's something you can have a good understanding of every step of the way, and you can easily choose how one thing should work versus another, how a person or a business interacts with you and your data. So we're expanding into some exciting aspects, expanding to cloak cards coming soon. We're also just launched our beta version of auto cloaking. We're working on one-click credential updating, where you can actually take all of your past accounts and automatically convert them to cloaked emails, cloaked phone numbers, passwords, etc. And there's a lot more coming as we get into the end of the year in 2024 that can't quite talk about yet, but I'm super excited about. There's just been a lot of good investment behind the scenes, and I think we've got a really exciting team that's working here at Cloak. And I'm always happy and proud to be working with these individuals, thinking about what privacy means for everyday people.
Yeah. And I love, I feel like there's a lot of these type of things that are popping up, but I've loved how Cloaked has approached this. Just this idea of you don't have to give out your actual email address, or you don't have to give out your actual phone number or your actual credit card number. Like, you can add a layer in between those two and have control over how that layer is used and whether or not you can remove, access or allow somebody to use that phone number or use that credit card anymore. I think that's a great thing, and I'm glad you guys have that available. Like I said, if you go and you're signing up, you want to give it a try, I don't even think you have to give a credit card at this point. You can just sign up and give it a try, cloaked.app, and then see what you think. And then if you decide that it's something you want, using the code ATS, you'll get an exclusive discount on all of that stuff. All right, let's move into a little bit of the Q&A. If you have questions about Cloaked, you can start leaving that, but I'm going to go ahead and follow in for some of these. I'm going to start with this, even though I don't necessarily think that I want you can answer however you want. I get this all the time. Hey, your privacy policy says that you have to comply with relevant laws of the country. That is not private. Guys, I'm going to, Arjun, you can say whatever you want after this. A company has to comply with the laws of the country in which it is operating. That is, you can't not do that. Now, the question is, if they ask for something, do you have it, right? Does a company have the data that might be asked for? But you cannot fault a company for complying with the laws of the country. They have to do that, or else they're run out of business. So don't get hung up on that. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Arjun?
Well, you nailed it. I was just saying that it's exactly what you put, is that we have to comply with the laws, but that's why we invest in things like encryption, what data is actually accessible. That way there's a balancing act. But at the end of the day, you're right. We're a business. And if we don't follow a law, they'll just say you're no longer a business. And I think that is true in every country.
Yeah. All right. Next question I thought was really good. What happens when companies, right? And I don't know who this particular person is referring to, but they start not accepting, let's say, these type of cloaked email addresses or even cloaked phone numbers. I've seen that happen a couple of times before. Are there ways that you're trying to mitigate that, or are there things that we can do? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different answers to that. One around emails and phone numbers, talking about is that we have designed interesting systems and technical aspects within Cloaked, where if we notice something is being blocked, we can actually find where we regenerate or create a new email address that will be accepted. That's things that we're working on and implementing, where we can support where if one Cloaked domain is blocked, we can do another one. And that's just a whack-a-mole approach. We will keep doing. A company can't move fast enough and keep blocking us. We will keep spinning and rotating, etc. And the phone number, similarly, that we have a similar workaround to regenerate and try to go on these systems that block us. But some websites still block the workaround. And one of those things that we are investing further and further in Cloaked to how do we become a telephony company, a company that actually invests in telephony services, how we think about cellular services, and so that these are real working information, real working numbers, and we're investing in those efforts. And so that way we can continuously make sure that we're providing information that won't be blocked. And then the long-term answer, and we actually have this already, is that we want to work with the companies. Because as you kind of said, what can we do? It's like, let the companies know that we want to have privacy. We want to have a say. We want to have some control. I think we're the only privacy company that invests, and we get flack for it, but we think it's important, invest in bad actor mitigation or in fraud. We don't want, and a lot of privacy companies take the stance, we don't see anything, we don't want to access anything. And so we don't have access to your personal data, but if we know you're going to create 30 phone numbers in the next 5 seconds, our system says, well, hold on a second. Like, this doesn't make quite sense. This sounds like fraudulent behavior. And this is where the type of thinking where we want to make sure that we want users to be using Cloaked everywhere they can, We don't want to use it for fraud, scams, abuse, etc. And that's the balancing act. But because of that, we want to tell businesses, hey, support Cloaked. Like, we want you to be using us. I think we're the only virtual alias company accepted on GitHub. Proton, DuckDuckGo email, all these things have been blocked. Cloaked emails are allowed. And I think because we reached out and said, hey, consumers and customers are really wanting GitHub, and you blocked our Cloaked email. So instead of doing the email workaround, we said, let's try out and see if they work with us. And they did. And they said, okay, we will whitelist and support Cloaked. We see what you guys are doing. We like your approach. And now we're supported there, and none of the other ones are. And we're going to keep going down that route because we're investing in Cloaked not just as a privacy solution, but something that works for people. It's for every day. And so we won't take the stance that, okay, you can do whatever you want for this. We're going to set some guardrails, some guidelines. We don't want fraud. We don't want abuse. We don't want scandals. And we want this to be something that people can safely use anywhere they go. And with that trust in mind, the business will say, okay, fine, let's work together. We'll support Cloaked, maybe not something else, because they're saying we're not going to give you bad users that are going to just come in and abuse your own product. That's kind of the short answer or long answer of this, is that there's multiple steps. There's technical work we can do, and there's relationships we can do. And if you guys want to email them and say we want Cloaked supported, that helps our case when we reach out to them.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to one of the next questions that we get. Do you have, like, when you're talking about bad actor mitigation, like, is there a limit on phone numbers, or like how exactly does that work when I'm creating email addresses or creating phone numbers?
Yeah. So there's no limit on email addresses or phone numbers. Phone numbers, I put the little asterisk in there, is that there are bad actor mitigation systems in place. So when you hit 100 phone numbers, you hit that right now, we kind of put a quick pause and say, okay, and the system looks and say, okay, how quickly are people making numbers? What's going on? And because of that, we put that cap. We're not the best at our bad actor mitigation quite yet. We're getting better and better and smarter around it. We put a soft cap, but every time a user asks us, hey, we want to get over the 100 phone number, and our system hasn't detected it quite yet, we go ahead and immediately approve or reach out to them and say, hey, we're going to approve and increase the limit on your account. So our goal is to not put the limit, but it's until we can get better at our bad actor mitigation, we have to put a little bit of safeguard on us to give us a little bit of time and energy. So that way we don't want, first of all, the phone numbers we use for fraud and abuse, that'll cause Cloaked to get blocked immediately or get blocked in more and more websites. We want to make sure people are using Cloaked for their own personal reasons, their own good, not using for scams or fraud. And that's why we want to make sure that it doesn't hurt other users. We don't want the rotten apple or the bad person ruining it for everybody else. So that's where I'd say it's a soft limit or detection that, and if we don't get to you fast enough, you can reach out to us and your limits will get increased no matter what. That's something that we always believe in. We want to work with consumers through that approach.
Awesome. All right. Going back in, I'll let you answer this right here. So if a government, this is from the same guy who was asking about that privacy policy, but if a government asks for our data from you, what exactly do you have?
Yeah. So kind of come to it. All of your account logins, all of your information is encrypted. You put your name into Cloaked, that's encrypted. We don't know this information. Even one thing we do different than a lot of the competitors in space, your username is also hashed, and then separately is also an encrypted version of username, but we don't have access to all your account information. This is so a government person asks, well, we're not able to tie it back to user. If someone gives us a Cloaked email or a Cloaked phone number, we will be able to say, hey, this is user ID 513. We don't have access to the data. If you sign up for an account, you'll see when you make a new account, your inbox is all encrypted, so we don't have access to the data within our Cloaked. They can reach out to a phone carrier, etc., but we don't have access to it within inside the Cloaked platform. Now we think about what we do have. Well, the one thing is what you can optionally provide is an email address or phone number, which you don't have to give for Cloaked. But if you do, we have that still encrypted end-to-end, part of the encrypted transit, encrypted at rest. We have that information because if you want to get the phone call or get the email, we have to make the phone call or send the email. And as part of forwarding, if you don't have it, there's no way to make a phone call or send the phone call to your native device. So that's part where people are like, how could you have our phone number? It's like, well, you want us to call you. So there's no other way to call you because calling is not an encrypted protocol. Email is not an encrypted protocol. SMS is not an encrypted protocol. Now, we've got a lot of ideas around that where we want to actually invest in making encrypted SMS. We send a link, you click a link, and you can see an encrypted web view, etc. But for the time being, that's part of the information. And we're going to get better about this around what does that look like? How is it handled? But for the most part, looking at all the data, that's it. Because it's encrypted, and you don't have to give us the email phone number. At that point, then we don't have anything. We just have the cloaked email, cloaked phone number, and then all of your encrypted account information.
Okay. Well, Wizard asks, your thoughts on open sourcing on the client side. Are there any plans for improvement in terms of how you guys handle transparency?
Absolutely. So one, Cloaked has already been pen tested. We've been ISO 27001. We're the only privacy company in our space that's 27701 certified, which is for privacy. So we're constantly having people poke and prod about Cloaked. We're going to be working on wrapping up SOC 2. So we have a lot of people poking in, thinking about Cloaked, the business, what we're doing in our product. In terms of the approach for open sourcing, we absolutely want to open source a lot of aspects to Cloaked. One thing is that from our side, we want to make sure that we can open source our encryption SDK, these things right away. We're working on that. It's just a lot of work from a business that deals with a lot of bugs internally that we get reported from customers. And then we get people from the open source community saying you should do things like this, improve this, etc. We want to handle both. It just becomes a lot. When you're an open source company, you're now adding another layer of complexity to what you're doing. But we absolutely have that on our roadmap. We're starting with our encryption SDK. We want to make sure that's open sourced and then continue that train. There's some aspects we're going to keep private for a little while. Nobody's cracked the way we do phone numbers. And so so many competitors are entering this space. So we want to make sure we can maintain that competitive edge while we're still building Cloaked. But we ultimately want to increase open source for Cloaked altogether more and more and more as we grow. But as a business, we're fledgling, we want to grow. We want to make sure that everybody asks us, all of our competitors ask us, how did you figure out phone numbers? It's like, well, I've got a decade of experience in phone numbers and email addresses. So that's why our email addresses work better and our phone numbers work better than other competitors. We'll open source that for you can see that later, not right now. Oh, Josh, I don't think I can hear you. Is that me?
Nope, that's me not realizing that I'm on mute and being a moron like that. So there we go. I was just going to say, you got some people coming into the chat that have used your app for a while now. This particular person, the Energetic Queen, has been since March and really loves it. I've been using the app and really like what you guys have done there. Remember, if you want to go and learn more, you can go to cloaked.app. Before we close this up, Arjun, I want to give you an opportunity. If you have anything else you wanted to share or say, just, or nothing at all, you can just let us know, but I'll just give you an opportunity, give you the floor here.
Well, one, I want to thank you for the time here today. I really appreciate it. This is a topic that people don't talk about a lot, that there's a difference between security and privacy, and even the word anonymity. Like, all these words mean different things. I think comes down to comfort and control. That's what espouses privacy, builds security. That's what you kind of really unpack, understand as people, because every step of the way, people will want to take away your digital rights and how you are online, how do you interact, how do you register, give up information. And as people, the less we interact and the more we voice with companies that are doing this, there's going to be more change. And I think that's the thing that I'd close in part of, is that Cloaked and what we're missing is that when I started this company, I could do a lot of different things before doing Cloaked or thinking about a company I wanted to get into, but I wanted to do something meaningful, something that makes a difference in people's lives. That's why we did this. I didn't start Cloaked to start a startup or build a business as an enterprise. It's to make a meaningful difference. And if it makes enough meaningful difference in people's lives, we make money and grow from that so we can keep making a difference. And I think that's why it's important to think about what is a business's values. And that's what we're all about. We're excited to people to try out Cloaked. Definitely try out the promo code. And if you have any questions or issues, I'll do this live just to show you kind of how fast Cloaked is. You can always text me. It's always an interesting perspective that how do you actually know your information? Well, with Cloaked, I can give you a phone number. So for this audience, if you ever have an issue or you want to talk to, you can text me directly. My number is 573-360-1321. And that's the easy convenience privacy should be. And we're going to keep doing that as Cloaked. And we hope to make sure that everyone sees that privacy can be easy. It's not dead. This is step one, how we kind of change how the internet works. And we're here to stay. And I'm happy about that. I'm so happy to be here today.
That's awesome. Well, as you said, I've got the phone number right here on the screen. So if you wanted to text him just to try it out, you can do that. Thank you for everybody who has joined us in this live stream and that has just spent a little bit of time with us talking about privacy. Even if you're watching this afterward, go ahead. You're welcome to leave questions in the comments. I'll do my best to follow up to answer some of the questions here. And yeah, the best way that you can support this type of conversation continuing to happen is to just like these videos, subscribe to YouTube, follow along with what Cloaked is doing. And yeah, thank you guys all for taking some time, and I will see you at the next time we do a live webinar. Thanks, Arjun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye, guys.